Hi class, how are you? Today I'd like to talk about the attitudes. Attitude is a very important component to observe the consumers. The consumers does react to the marketing stimuli and we call that as attitude. And they are the factors that influence the attitude of the consumers. We'll look at those factors. As you can see over here, this is the consumer behavior frameworks. So far we have examined the decision process. So there is a situation when consumers recognize problems. It can be a needs, unmet needs, or the opportunities. So when they feel the problem, they feel that unmet needs exist, they starting to searching the information and they evaluate alternatives and finally select one. When the consumer selects the services or product, they select the outlet where to purchase and they make a purchases, and after they have purchased the product or services, they consume, they use it, and they dispose of the product and they do evaluate it post-purchasing processes. So far we have examined those decision processes, and then after midterm exam period we are now getting to the point of the internal influences. What are the factors that consumers have and what kind of things actually affect consumer decision processes? So we studied the perception, learning, memory, and motivations as well. And today I'd like to talk about the attitude among those internal influences of consumers. So this chapter we have basically 6 learning objectives. First things first, we want to define the attitude and its role in consumer behavior. The attitude has 3 components, so we will study what are the 3 components of attitude. And number 3, okay, if we do know there are 3 components of attitude, what kind of strategy we can use to change the attitude of consumers? So that's number 3. And number 4, we have examined the ELM model before, but we haven't gone to the detail of this ELM. So we'll discuss the ELM, elaboration likelihood model of persuasion, in this chapter. And then we'll look at the role of message source, appeal, and structure on attitude. So how we can design our messages and what kind of appeal mood we use the message. Does it matter to influence consumers' attitude, formation, and change? That will be the learning objectives of these chapters. So first learning objectives, let's go to the detail of the attitude definition. The attitude is an enduring organization of motivational, emotional, perceptual, and cognitive processes with respect to some aspect of our environment. It sounds very complex, but it's not true. As you go to the next slide, you will get to know the details. It's like this. There is environment. You have a person in relation to you, like family or friends, or influencer, even the star. Or there is a country or object, animations, TV, media, or the product. We are surrounded by the environment. And to those environment, we have an enduring, some kind of staying organization of motivation, emotion, and cognition processes. So attitude is something that reaction to the environment, but in terms of the motivation, emotion, and cognitive processes. So let's take a look at the details. See, this page explains that attitude components and manifestation. Attitudes can be defined as the way people think, feel, and act towards some aspect of the environment. A result of all the factors discussed so far in the text, attitude influences as well as reflect the lifestyle individuals pursue. So here is the initiator that influences the component of attitude. It could be a product, situations, retail outlet, sales personnel. What kind of personnel do you meet? And is sales personnel enthusiastic or very calm? Advertisement. Did you just watch the advertisement about the chickens or hamburger? And other attitude objectives. And this can be the action initiator of the stimuli, and that will affect the affective component. Affective component is manifested by the emotions or feelings about specific attribute or object over object. Second component of attitude is cognitive. Cognitive component is manifested as beliefs about specific attribute or over object. Behavioral component is manifested by the behavioral intentions with respect to specific attribute over object. And these all three components together forms an attitude that's overall orientation toward object. Attitude have three components: cognitive, affective, and behavioral. It is like how you think, how you feel, how you behave. The cognitive component consists of the individual's beliefs or knowledge about the object. It is generally assessed by using a version of the multi-attribute attitude model. Feelings or emotional reaction to an object represent the affective component of the attitude, and it can be assessed in various ways, but it also includes ADSAM. As you can see over this slide, it has ADSAM, self-assessment mannequin, and AEE, appeal, engagement, and empowerment. So as consumers look at this slide, they can assess how they feel about this advertisement or this product stimuli, etc. That is kind of one of the ways that we assess consumers' affective component. The behavioral component reflects actions and statement of behavioral intention with respect to specific attribute of the object or the overall object, like do I like to purchase an iPhone, etc. In general, all three components tend to be consistent with each other. All three components of attitude tend to be consistent and reinforce a particular attitude. For example, a favorable attitude is generally composed of positive cognitions, beliefs. I think that Samsung computer must be trustworthy, it will work well. So positive cognition, beliefs. And the positive feelings, affective. I like it, I like the brand of the Samsung. An intention to use, recommend, or support, that's a behavior component. So next time when I'm purchasing the laptop computer, I'd like to purchase Samsung. That's kind of behavioral component. So favorable attitude is generally composed of these like positive opinion, positive feelings, and positive intentions. So all three are consistent. However, sometimes it is not true. There are a number of factors can create inconsistencies, and marketers must understand and incorporate these in their marketing research and communication strategy. For example, I see that, okay, people have high positive emotion to the certain product, and they do believe that this will work well, but they do not like to purchase this product. Why? Maybe because of the high price, or they could not buy it. Why? Because the service personnel was not friendly, or after service was not good. So although I think that this product is good, working well, and I like this brand, I do have positive emotion to this brand. However, I don't want to buy it because of the lack of the after service processes, something like that. Then you will change certain part of those to increase, to make a behavioral component as positive. That can be one way to influence consumers' attitude. So there are 6 factors found to reduce the apparent consistency among attitude components, like lack of need, lack of ability, failure to consider relative attitude, attitude ambivalence, weakly held beliefs and affect, and failure to consider interpersonal and situation influences. So, when those consumers have not consistent attitude component across behavioral emotional, and cognitive. When they feel, I don't like this product, then they will have a low behavioral component of the attitude, right? Then it's inconsistent across these three components. Lack of ability, oh, I cannot purchase it because of the high price. Or you can say, yeah, that computer works very well, high performing, but I cannot use it because I'm not good at those electronic gadgets. So lack of ability may affect consumers' behavior intention to be low. Failure to consider relative attitude. Maybe like that. I love Apple, I love iPhone, but I love the Samsung phone better. Or I say I love LG Gram and I love iPhone MacBook. However, I think that LG Gram works better in South Korea because of the lot of after service center and because of the cheap price, etc. So although these consumers like to have positive attitude toward the MacBook, he or she loves LG Gram better. So because of the higher relative attitude toward this LG Gram, they were not gonna purchase this MacBook. So failure to consider relative attitude is the case of the inconsistency. Attitude ambivalence. What is attitude ambivalence? Consumers sometimes hold mixed beliefs or mixed feelings about an attitude object, like seafood. Oh, well, I like seafood sometimes, or I do not like some seafood sometimes. So they do not go to purchase seafood. They do not have fixed feelings about this object. Or say, oh, seafood must be good for our health because of the high protein. Or say, no, it's from Sea of Japan. It must have a not a good ingredient. It may be a little bit of the immune by the other harmful ingredients, something like that. So like mixed beliefs. I think it's good. No, it's not. So they do not have a strong attitudinal component. So these attitudes are less stable over time and less predictive of behavior because of this ambivalence attitude. Weakly held beliefs and affect is similar. Weakly held beliefs and affect. For example, we need to study Chinese. Yes, think about that. They also study English. Why don't you just focus on studying English in a given time? So I know that I need to study Chinese, but I also need to study English. So for now, let's just focusing on the studying English. So now weakly held in beliefs and affect toward learning Chinese. But that also, in fact, affect on consumers' inconsistent attitude toward learning Chinese. Failure to consider interpersonal influence. It is about relationship. Okay, although you love seafood, sometimes when you go out for dinner, your partner or your boyfriend or girlfriend don't like to eat seafood. Then you change your attitude. You're saying, no, I don't like to eat seafood. I don't like the seafood. Or let's say next time. So you are given your attitude and changing your attitude against the interpersonal influences. So basically these 6 things are the factors that may account for inconsistencies. Except these things, in general, consumers have the similar direction of all 3 components. How you feel, how you think, how you behave will be pointing to the same direction. But these are the exceptions that may account for inconsistency. Now, these inconsistencies generate marketers' opportunities, so we want to change the consumer's attitude. And how can we do that? Maybe attitude change strategy can focus on affect, behavior, cognition, or some combination. So attempts to change affect generally rely on classical conditioning. Do you remember that? So we do kind of the mere exposure, etc. So let me explain a little bit further in detail later. And change strategy focusing on behavior rely more on operant conditioning. Changing cognition usually involves information processing and cognitive learning. It can involve changing beliefs about such things as a brand's attribute level, shifting the importance of a given attribute, adding beliefs about new attribute, or changing the perceived idea point for a specific attribute or for the brand concept overall. So let me explain in detail as we go further. First things first, effective changing strategies. Effective changing strategies are involving the various forms of classical conditioning affecting toward the advertisement or website. You can use humor, celebrities, or emotional appeal. Or sometimes we do use mere exposure. What is mere exposure? Mere exposure is that simply presenting a brand to individuals on a large number of occasions. Now, how does it work? The theory that simply presenting a brand to an individual on a large number of occasions might make the individual's attitude toward the brand more positive. So you show them frequently, then they will love you. That's a mere exposure effect. Then what are the psychology behind that? The continued repetition of advertisement for low involvement products may well increase liking and subsequent purchase of the advertised brands without altering the initial belief structure. The mechanism is that heightened familiarity enhances liking. Because they have seen you so many times, now they get to know you, they familiarize with you, and that heightened familiarity enhances liking. That's the logic behind this mere exposure effect. That's why low involvement product category often choose the strategy to turn on the advertisement several times without explaining the details about the product. Well, let's move on and then we'll get to the point in a little more detail. Now let's consider the ELM model and its relationship with the attitude changing strategies. What is ELM? ELM is the shortened word for the elaboration likelihood model. 정교화 가능성 모델이죠, 한국말로. An elaboration likelihood model is a theory about how attitudes are formed and changes under varying conditions of involvement, different conditions of involvement. The ELM suggests different communication strategies depending on involvement. It is like that, okay, how consumers highly attentive or lowly attentive, you have to choose the different communication strategy. That's the core of the ELM. In general, detailed factual information, that's a central cue, is effective in high involvement central route situation. Low involvement peripheral route situation generally require limited information, instead rely on simple affective and cognitive cues such as pictures, music, and characteristics of people in the advertisement, that's peripheral cues. The ELM has found general support, so it is like believed a lot. However, what is perceived as relevant can depend on the situation. For example, last time one of the students asked me that how it is differently worked. So let me give an example here. Attractive model like Jeon Ji-hyun and her long and shiny hair may be central information in shampoo advertisement, but Jeon Ji-hyun's long and shiny hair, attractive model and her hair, is peripheral information in car advertisement, right? Even if we have recruited the Jeon Ji-hyun who has a shiny long hair in the car advertisement, attractive model and her hair will be the peripheral information in the car advertisement. So the ELM suggests that involvement is a key determinant of how information is processed and attitudes are changing. High involvement results in a central route to attitude change by which consumers deliberately examine and process those message elements that they believe are relevant to meaningful and logical evaluation of a brand. So meaning that when consumers are high involvement, they are willing to spend the time, they can use their cognitive capacity to process information. So they will be deliberately examining and processing the message element, and they will find out, okay, isn't it the relevant information to evaluate the brand? Is this a meaningful and logical information to the brand? That's a situation of high involvement. What about the low involvement? Low involvement results in a peripheral route to attitude change. There are consumers form impressions of the brand based on exposure to the readily available cues in the message, regardless of the relevance of those cues to the brand itself. Like the hair, Jeonjeon's hair in the car advertisement is like peripheral. It doesn't relate to the car, but consumers can be relying on that peripheral cue if they're low involvement. So cue relevance and competitive consideration need to be considered before relying solely on general ELM conclusion that central cues for the information should be used under high involvement, and peripheral cues like celebrity endorser are only effective under low involvement. So let me show you the little detail on ELM. Here are the core tenets of the ELM. Compared to additive formed under the peripheral route, additive formed under the central route tend to be stronger. It's very logical, right? In the central route, it's very relevant to the product information, so the formed attitude under the central route will be stronger. So it's more resistant to counter-persuasion attempts. Like, for example, the other competitive brand will be attacked to the attitude that you have. Like, if you think that Apple iPhone is cool and nice, it has a great functionality, and you use the central route, like how it is performing well, how it is comparable with the other application uploaded on the mobile phone, then it's very strong because it's central route. Then whenever you watch the commercials from the Samsung Galaxy, you will be more resistant to that counter-persuasive attention because your already formed attitude toward iPhone is very strong, based on the central route. In such cases, it is more accessible from memory, and it is more predictive of behaviors, meaning that because this is very strong attitude, we can expect that this consumer will be loyal to the iPhone. Number 2, core tenet of the ELM is that peripheral cues, we call that as PCs, influence persuasion under low involvement but not high involvement. Central cues, CCs, influence persuasion under high involvement but not low involvement. Isn't it very simple? Like when consumers are very busy, so there is no the ability, or there is no motivation. I do not want to purchase any laptop computer in a near future. So low motivation or no ability. In such cases, it's a low involvement setting. In such cases, the peripheral cues like the celebrity like BTS or Jeonjeon, those you love, those who you like. If there is any celebrity that you like appeared in the advertisement, it will capture attention, and they'll form that, oh, that computer looks like the good, something like that. But not high involvement setting. If you think that I'm gonna purchase a laptop computer in next week, then you will be carefully examine the central information, central cues of the laptop computer, like CPU, speed, battery life, after services, prices, or any functionality, weight, etc. So central cues influence persuasion under high involvement situation, but not under low involvement. And peripheral cues, those not relevant information of the product, will be influencing, like music, picture, celebrity will influence persuasion under low involvement. It's very simple, right? But there are caveats and exceptions related to the cue relevance and competition. So what is a PC and CC? So to evaluate the cue relevance, you have to examine the situation. I gave this example like unattractive model and hair. Maybe this isn't irrelevant in an advertisement for a car, but this is relevant in an advertisement for shampoo, right? So same hair of the attractive model become PC, peripheral cue for a car advertisement, but central cue for an ad of the shampoo. So in this case, the attractive model would influence persuasion under high involvement for shampoos, but not for cars. You get it? And another thing, so we go different. Competitive situation. Peripheral cues can influence persuasion under high involvement in competitive situations. So we just learned that PC is not persuasive in high involvement, right? But this is like exception situation. In the competitive situation, when central cues neutralize due to homogeneity across competing brands, what does that mean? So the brand A and brand B are similar in terms of the central cue. In such cases, peripheral cue becomes tiebreaker. So it's not an exact example, but think about this like refrigerator, 냉장고. There's a refrigerator from the Whirlpool, and refrigerator from the LG, and refrigerator from Samsung. We know that this how the refrigerator can keep the food as cool for a long time. So cooling functionality. It's same across this competing brand, LG, Samsung, Whirlpool, right? In such cases, peripheral cues like how it looks like color of refrigerator is not so central to use refrigerator, but this personal cue, peripheral cues become tiebreakers. So people decide to purchase the Samsung bespoke because it has a variety of the colors and you can choose whatever you want. Or sometimes when consumers try to purchase an apartment, it's a big deal. But then when they see that this apartment A, apartment B looks like same location, same price range, and like same apartment name, because it's in the same apartment places. Only difference is like that wasn't it the 201 or 202 or 301, 302, something like that. So in such cases, hypothetically, let's think about the hypothetical situation. In such cases, all the important information to purchase apartment are neutralized because it's homogeneous. Then what happened? It's very simple, very irrelevant small thing, like whether the decoration of the wall looks nicer in option A, although you would change that in when you move in, or say, okay, maybe the tree outside in front of your apartment option B looks taller than apartment number option A. It's very simple because the tree height can be changing. It's not so much determining factor to choose the apartment. However, because the central cues are already neutralized, those peripheral cues will be the determining factor, tiebreaker. Okay, so you have to think about that when does peripheral cues can influence persuasion under high involvement in competitive situation.